You ever tune through an old radio at night? All that static, the faint voices from nowhere. It's like the world is whispering secrets you're not supposed to hear. My name is Eli Graves. I was a broadcast tech before everything fell. Last winter I took a solo contract to repair a high-altitude relay station in Washington State. Easy money, no people, just me in the cold. I didn't know I'd be listening to the dead. The tower sat on a ridge, surrounded by endless trees and snow that never seemed to melt. They dropped me in by chopper, no road access, no backup, just a metal skeleton stabbing into the sky and a concrete shack filled with outdated equipment. I was alone before the rotor blades had even disappeared behind the clouds. The first few days were normal, boring even. I ran diagnostics, recalibrated the dish, replaced some aging cabling, and kept the generator running through a mix of diesel and stubborn willpower. Nights were quiet, and I'd sit by the radio, flicking through frequencies out of habit more, then curiosity. That's when I found it. 462.34 MHz. A frequency not listed in any manual, not registered, not assigned. Just dead air until 2:17 a.m. when the static broke like a curtain parting. It started soft, a whisper, one voice, then many. A slow, rising chorus that felt less like speech and more like remembering. Like the radio was dreaming. I didn't sleep that night. The next evening I tried to recreate it. Same frequency, same time. And again, it came through. The voices were clearer, still layered, still unintelligible, but there was something new. A rhythm like breathing. Shallow, ragged, right in my ear. Then it said my name. Not once, not shouted, just gently, like a mother waking a sleeping child. Callum. I dropped the headset and stared at the radio like it had grown teeth. I told myself it was a trick, a sideband bleed, or maybe audio hallucinations from stress and isolation. But the next night it wasn't just voices, it was a knock. 3 sharp taps on the cabin door. No one was there. I swept the snow with my flashlight. No tracks, no marks, no wind. Just those 3 knocks echoing in my head, perfectly timed with the transmission. I began recording everything, hour by hour. I cataloged the voices, the patterns, the changes. Some nights they sobbed. Other nights they screamed. Once, I heard a child laughing, and a soft melody hummed under the static, and then came the names, dozens of them, spoken one after another like a roll call. Then mine, every night, louder. Eli Graves, help us. I found old maintenance logs buried in a drawer from a man named Henry Kells. The last entry was dated 1997. Voices again, can't sleep. Frequency, 462.34. It knows my name. He never signed out. No one ever said what happened to him. His truck was still listed on the property inventory. I found it under a drift of snow, half a mile from the tower. Keys still in the ignition. Inside the glove box was a cassette tape. Played it. The recording was short. Just static then. They're not gone. They're trapped. The tower holds them. It repeats because they can't move on. The signal is the prison. I couldn't breathe. I shut everything down, killed the generator, disconnected the antenna, packed my gear and tried to hike out. But the forest wouldn't let me. The trees shifted. Paths I marked with ribbon were gone. My compass spun in circles and night fell faster than it should have. I made it back to the cabin just before dark, frozen and panicked. The radio was on. I'd unplugged it. The signal was still there. Don't leave. That night I dreamed of static. Endless fields of white noise and shapes moving inside it. Human silhouettes flickering like bad reception, mouths open in silent screams. They weren't whispering anymore, they were begging. Somewhere deep inside the noise, something ancient is calling out. Not alive, not dead. Just broadcasting, forever, and now it knows I'm listening. The cabin was small but well stocked. Someone, somewhere had prepared it like they expected a man to vanish there. Food for weeks, stacked neatly in labeled tins. Firewood piled with military precision, as if any lapse in order might let the cold creep in faster. Gear hung on pegs and rows. Snowshoes, lanterns, 2 flare guns, A survival knife so sharp it looked ceremonial. Everything was there except a connection to the world. No internet, no phone reception, just a two-way radio, an emergency band for short-range comms, and an old analog rig wired straight into the base of the relay tower for diagnostics and test broadcasts. No way to call home, no way to scroll yourself sane. Just snow, silence, and static. I told myself that was part of the appeal. I wanted the quiet. Day one was uneventful. I took it slow, checked the tower's support structure, swept the control box for rodents, ran a basic signal strength check. Everything was fine, stable. The systems pinged back clear. I logged the numbers, drank coffee that tasted like melted plastic, tried to sleep. The wind howled like something half alive. Day two, it got colder. My breath hung in the cabin like it was afraid to fall. I kept busy to stay warm, split wood, replaced a cracked insulator on the dish mount, calibrated the spectrum analyzer. It all worked. Too well, actually. The signal returns were perfect. Unnaturally perfect. Like they were pre-written answers from a machine that wanted me to believe it was working. Day three, the first real anomaly. The diagnostic system, a battered analog rig that probably hadn't been updated since 2004, started glitching. Not crashing, not stalling, just drifting. It would sweep, pause, and lock onto 144.7 FM every time. That frequency didn't exist, not officially. I checked the spectrum allocation chart I brought. Ham bands, maritime, military, nothing was assigned to 144.7 in this region, but there it was. A signal. Soft, faint, a loop, barely audible unless you cranked the gain so high it distorted. 4 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause, then it started again. 4, 3, 4, 3. It wasn't mechanical, like the hum of failing electronics. It wasn't fast enough to be digital. It was slow, precise. It sounded human, like knuckles on a wooden table. I recorded it, played it back, tried running it through a spectrum analyzer. The pattern held, and the tone never varied. I checked the antenna's alignment. Still true. The signal didn't change with wind or snow or temperature. It wasn't interference. It was intentional. That night, I left the radio on while I cooked dinner. Chili from a can, flavorless and thick like paste. I muttered to myself, as I always did when the silence stretched too thin. Might as well fix the antenna before sunset, I said out loud, wiping my hands on a rag. Didn't think anything of it. I never touched the transmit switch. Didn't need to. 2 hours later, I was sitting at the diagnostics rig, scribbling down tower temps and logging voltages when I noticed the tapping had stopped. Silence on 144.7. Then, the static shifted. It wasn't just noise anymore. It was my voice. Quiet, echoing like it was coming from the bottom of a dry well. Crackling, slightly, like the tape had been left out in the cold. Might as well fix the antenna before sunset. I froze. I knew my own voice, the cadence, the way I stress words like sunset, the little pause I make between phrases. It was me, but I hadn't transmitted anything. I hadn't even touched the damn mic. I checked the feed history. No outbound signal, nothing logged. I even looked at the mic jack to make sure the connector wasn't loose. It wasn't. Everything was normal, except it wasn't, because someone had recorded me, word for word, breath for breath, and played it back, on a frequency that doesn't exist. I listened to it again. Might as well fix the antenna before sunset. And then it looped. Slightly different timing. Same voice. Same inflection. Not a recording. Mimic like something trying to sound like me. Learning how to get it right. Testing the shape of my words. I shut off the equipment. Turned off every light. Sat in the dark, flashlight in hand, back to the wall. I didn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., the tapping returned. 4. Pause. 3. But it wasn't the radio. It was the wall, right behind my head. 4 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks, like it was coming from inside the walls of the cabin. I spun around. No one there. Nothing. Just pine paneling and frost creeping in around the window frames. I checked the snow outside. No footprints. No signs of anything moving. But I knew. Something was listening. And now it was speaking back. On day 6, it escalated. Everything that came before. The mimicry, the tapping, the whispers riding static like ghosts in wires. It was just the prelude, the invitation. That night, whatever was speaking, stepped closer. It was just after 2:30. I remember because I'd started marking the time every night the signal changed. Always between 2:17 and 2:34 a.m., like clockwork. As if something out there followed its own corrupted rhythm. I was sitting by the radio, bundled in 3 layers, staring at the snow creeping along the window pane, when the signal dropped. Not cut, not distorted, just gone. Silence. Real silence. Not the hiss of an open frequency or the hum of idle circuitry. This was dead air in the truest sense, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl because you know it's not natural. It was the sound of something holding its breath. Then I heard it. A whisper. Not from the speakers, not through the wires. From behind me, close. So close, I felt the condensation from it brush my skin like frost. Still here. Still listening. The voice wasn't mine. It wasn't distorted playback. It was deeper, drier, ancient, but curious, almost gentle, like a spider crawling along your arm, tasting your pulse. And then, static. Not the usual soft crackle. This was a blast. A violent, electric scream of feedback, like something had clawed its way through the signal with bloodied nails. It hit my headset so hard it flew off my ears. For a second, I thought I was bleeding. The pain was sharp, ringing in the bones behind my eyes. I stumbled backward, heart in my throat, staring at the radio as a wisp of smoke rose from the audio jack like it had exhaled whatever had spoken. Turned to the window, drawn by instinct, dread, or both. The snow outside was untouched. Still. Not even a rabbit trail. But then I opened the cabin door. And everything changed. There were footprints in the snow, not leading to the door. Leading. Away. Bare feet. Human. No shoes. No socks. And not fresh. They looked melted, fuzzy around the edges. Like they'd been there a long time, but only just revealed. And yet, the door had never opened before that moment. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. Because I knew, somehow they hadn't been left. They had been delivered. I stood there for a long time, freezing air burning my lungs, waiting for the forest to shift, to speak again. It didn't, but I felt it, watching. The next morning I snapped. I packed my gear. Every emergency protocol screamed at me to evacuate. I went to start the generator. Nothing. Not even a tick. I opened it up. The engine was clean. Full tank. All connections intact. It should have started, but it didn't. I grabbed the satellite phone next. Dead. Not low battery. Dead. No lights. No power. Nothing. I opened the casing. The internal board was blackened around the battery leads like it had burned itself out. I didn't panic. I went outside. I screamed. Louder than I've ever screamed in my life. And the forest swallowed. It whole, no echo, no feedback from the trees. Just gone. Like my voice never existed. That night, the radio turned itself on. I didn't touch it, didn't plug it in, didn't power it up. It simply clicked to life. No whine, no warm-up, just a whisper of static, and then voices. Not one, hundreds, layered, distant. And they were saying names, slowly, carefully. A roll call from the other side of the curtain. And the first one, Connor Reeves, my brother, dead 6 years ago, ripped apart by a drunk driver on a rainy Sunday morning. Closed casket funeral. I'd barely spoken his name since. Then a new voice. My mother. She sounded tired. Soft. Callum. Honey. Are you there? I dropped to my knees. My hands were shaking. My mother died 3 winters ago, peacefully, in her sleep. But this voice wasn't just a memory. It knew me. It spoke like I'd just left the room. The radio crackled again. Another name. A friend I hadn't spoken to since high school. Dead from an overdose last year. Then more names. People I loved. People I feared. Then, names I didn't know. But I felt them. I felt their grief. Felt their deaths. It was like listening to an obituary read by the wind, and every syllable carried the weight of someone trapped, caught in this repeating loop of suffering. Their voices, pirated and dragged through that unholy frequency. I covered my ears. It didn't matter. The names kept coming. Some of the voices weren't even pretending anymore. They didn't sound human. They didn't try to be. They growled syllables through broken throats, scraping metal against bone, whispering not just names, but questions. Do you miss her? Would you trade places? Do you want to see what we see? I didn't sleep. I sat in the corner, knife in hand, radio unplugged and still playing. The air in the cabin never warmed. Even with the fire lit, I could see my breath. I knew then, this wasn't about repair. This tower wasn't broken, it was feeding. And now it had a new name to speak. Mine. Day 10. I hadn't spoken out loud in 2 days. Not to myself, not to the forest, not even in the dark when the walls seemed to breathe. My throat felt raw anyway, like the silence itself had been gnawing at it. The radio had gone quiet again. Not silent, there's a difference. It was waiting. That morning, the static came back. At first, the usual hiss. Then the tapping returned. Not like before. Not random. It had rhythm. Structure. I recognized it almost immediately. Morse code. It was weak, buried in the static like a secret whispered behind a waterfall. But it was there. Steady. Measured. Dot, dot, dot. Dash, dash. Dot. I scribbled the translation by hand, line by line, shivering not from the cold, but from the clarity. The message was short, 6 words. The signal is a door, you opened it, it knows you. I read it again. And again. Every time it hit harder, because somewhere deep inside, I knew it was true. I wasn't just picking up noise. I wasn't just listening to the void. I had answered it, and now it was coming through. That night, I blacked out. No warning, no dizziness, no sense of falling asleep. Just one moment standing at the tower console, watching the diagnostics flicker, and the next, gone. Dark. No dreams. No sound. Not even time. Just void. When I came to, I was lying on my back in the snow. No coat, no gloves. Frost bitten into my shirt. My fingers were purple, but I wasn't cold. I looked up. The sky was wrong. No stars, no clouds, just a flat slate of night. As if someone had painted the universe black and forgotten to poke holes for the stars to shine through. The tower stood ahead of me. Its red warning beacon, always blinking, always steady, was dead. No power, no hum. Just a jagged silhouette against a sky that no longer cared to shine. I sat up. That's when I heard it. A voice. Clear, calm, close. Standing exactly 5 feet behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. It didn't shout. It didn't growl. It whispered, like it had been standing there the whole time, waiting for the exact moment I'd wake up. Broadcast complete. 2 words. But they didn't echo in my ears. They echoed in my bones. It felt like something had taken every second of the last 10 days, every signal, every whisper, every voice it stole and mimicked, and transmitted it back. Not through wires, but through me. I ran. I didn't look. I didn't think. I tore through the snow, lungs burning, blind with terror. I don't remember where I went. I don't remember falling. I just remember running until the sky turned back to stars and the trees started to look like trees again. I made it back to the cabin, or what was left of it. The door was off its hinges, the wood warped, ice coated the inside walls, even though the fire had been burning just hours before. The radio sat on the table, pristine, unplugged, but powered, waiting. I didn't touch it. I wrapped myself in every blanket I could find and stared at that rig until sunrise. I knew what I'd done. I hadn't just listened. I hadn't just heard. I had broadcast. Whatever lived in that signal, it was never just speaking to me. It was looking for a voice. Now it had one. Mine. They found me 3 days later. A ranger chopper spotted me from above. A pale, shivering figure curled in the snow like a discarded doll. Frostbitten, dehydrated, half delirious. I don't even remember being airlifted out, just flashes of noise. Bright lights. The feeling of moving without walking. The doctors said it was a miracle I was alive. I didn't say a word. Not to them. Not to the Rangers. Not to the agency who hired me. What would I even say? That the radio talked back? That something answered me through dead air? That I'd opened a door through static and something had stepped through? No, they wouldn't believe me. And if they did, I don't want to know what else they'd want to hear. So I just nodded, took my meds, signed the papers, and went home. But I didn't leave it behind. You don't leave something like that behind. It followed me. Not in the way you think. Not a ghost. Not a monster. No cold hand reaching from the closet. Just the tapping. 4 taps. Pause. 3 taps. I started hearing it again the first night in my apartment. I was sitting in the dark, trying to sleep, when my phone buzzed once. Just a flicker. Then, my toaster, dead silent for hours, clicked like a switch being flipped. 4 clicks. Pause. 3. My TV turned on by itself the next day. No picture. Just snow, not a metaphor. Actual snow. Static. And beneath it, low, almost polite, came the whisper I'd buried under 3 days of exposure and 1,000 miles of denial. Still here. Still listening. I ripped the cables out of the wall. Didn't help. The signal doesn't need a device. It just uses them. Phones, appliances, radios, people. Sometimes I wake in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, and I realize I've been talking, mumbling words I don't remember, repeating names I haven't heard in years, voices I know are dead, and always, always, that rhythm. 4 taps. Pause. 3, like a knock from the other side of the wall, except there's no wall. Just a membrane. Thin as static. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream in snow, in frequencies, in feedback. And it's never quiet. It's never quiet. So if you're ever alone at night and your radio picks up something strange, if you hear the taps, 4, pause, 3, turn it off. Don't try to understand it. Don't respond. Because the signal, it remembers. And once you hear it, it never lets go.